Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started. We want to make sure that you get out in time so that you can go watch Colin Powell's speech. Definitely don't want to miss that. So welcome to our hands-on training. We're going to talk about building an automated drip campaign. So welcome. My name is Christina Major. I have been working for Salesforce for 4 years. I'm a Salesforce certified administrator. I'm an instructor, and I also run our authorization program. I have up here with me Amy Harbin. She is going to be driving for me. Say hello, Amy. Wave your hand, Amy. And we also have a variety of helpers around the room. If you're having trouble logging in at any time, any kind of issue, please raise your hand, and they'll be happy to come and assist you. So if you could raise your hand, let people know where you are. So we have Chris up here, and we have a variety of folks stationed in the back of the room as well. Okay, so I know that you guys have all seen our Safe Harbor statement. Our Safe Harbor statement just simply says this presentation could contain forward-looking statements, and then it pretty much basically says, okay, so if you have purchased a particular edition, make sure that whatever we talk about, again, if we're talking about forward-looking statements, they may or may not happen. So don't make any decisions based on what we talk about in this presentation. If you want to see the rest of this, please go to our website, and you can read all about it. All right, next slide. Now it's time to log in. And again, please make sure you raise your hand if you have any kind of issue while you're logging in. So the username is actually in your handout. So right under the Safe Harbor statement, you'll see the login information. So it's admin at df09 drip campaign, and then you'll see 3 pound signs. Those numbers are actually the numbers on your computer. They get filled in there, and then it's .com. And then you obviously will have a password, which should be on your sheet is password1. Okay? So, Amy, if you flip over to the application. So you say again, admin at df09 drip campaign, your number, which is on your computer.com, and then your password is password, the word password, and the number 1. If you have any trouble logging in, again, please raise your hand. Okay, good. That's really good. Wow. You guys must have been through this already because you guys are in really good shape. All right, so what are we going to talk about? So here's our agenda. We're going to talk about campaigns, obviously, since this is what it's all about. But we're going to talk about some new features with the campaigns and also the campaign members. If you've used that related list, you've seen it. There's some new things that have come with the recent release. We're going to talk about those specifically. The overview of what is an automated drip campaign, also known as a multi-wave campaign. We have not 1, not 2, but 3 exercises that we're going to go through. So the first one, we're going to review the campaign record, stuff that you already know, but show you some new things. The campaign members record as well. And then the second exercise, we're going to talk about automating email communication by using workflow. So how many of you in here have implemented and actually are using campaigns in Salesforce? Okay, super. How many of you are administrators? Okay, good number of you. Super. All right, so we're going to be going through a workflow example. Again, how do we automate things, communicate with people without having to do a lot of manual work? So if you've already created workflow, super. But it's going to give you a great idea of how to use workflow with campaigns. And then the last one, we're going to work with workflow again, but with a time trigger, and we're going to talk about an Apex trigger. So this is not a developer class. This is really admin functionality, but it's going to give you an idea of how Apex can work with workflow to create this automated multi-wave campaign. All right, next slide. All right, campaigns, again, is what it's all about. We know already that campaigns have sort of the summary fields, right? Tells you how many leads you have, what's your total of opportunities. So that already exists, but what you can do now is you can actually create your own roll-up summary fields that pulls from the campaign member records, and it will show up actually on your campaign. So we also have the ability to create a member record type, which you didn't have before, and custom fields. We actually did have custom fields on campaigns, but again, we have some extra abilities here. The campaign member record, This is new. We can create custom fields. The fields are pulled actually from the lead and contact fields, but you can add some extra cool things like lookup relationships, which we never had before, and we'll see an example of that when we do our exercise. Okay, next slide. So what is this automated drip campaign? It is also known as an automated multi-wave campaign. And we obviously have to work with the campaign and the people that are part of that campaign, so the campaign members. An important part of this and what we're going to be practicing is communicating. So we're going to be working with Workflow to set up an automated email communication system. So we say, okay, if a member does this, we're going to send them an email. And then what we're going to wrap up with is how do we set up this multi-wave effect where if a person is part of a campaign and then maybe they don't respond and we want to be able to follow up with them, but we don't want to have to do a lot of manual work, try to figure out who it is. What we do is we set up a workflow rule, and when a criteria is met, like, hey, they haven't done anything like in a week or two, then it's going to call it cloning them and associating them with another follow-up campaign. So that's ultimately what our goal is with the multi-wave campaign. All right. So here is our first exercise. So what we're going to do is we're going to, our AW Computing is our little pretend company in here. We're planning an annual seminar, and we want to make sure that we track information for our attendees, keep track of deposits that we've received from them, and also tally hotel registrations. We want to make sure we know where people are staying. Maybe we have to arrange shuttle service. Maybe we have to arrange a dinner, whatever it may be. So here are our tasks. Again, review the campaign record itself, review the campaign member records for Dwight Schrute, and then check the custom object, which is the hotel, to see a list of attendees for the St. Mark's Hotel. Okay, so some of this might be review. It's getting us started, and we have 2 more exercises to follow this up. So go into the application. And again, remember, at any time, if you have any difficulties, please raise your hand, and the helpers will come and assist. All right, and so what we're going to do is we're going to go to the Campaigns tab. And once you go into the Campaigns tab, you'll see the View menu there, and you have an option for all active campaigns. You can go ahead and click on Go. And the one that we are interested in is the annual seminar campaign. You can go ahead and select that campaign. Just click into it. You can see some, again, basic information here. But look at this section in the middle. So you see these summary fields? I know, again, that you're used to some of the out-of-the-box summary fields, but these are ones that are actually have been created specifically for this campaign. So we have the total amount of deposits, the total RSVPs, yes. So we're keeping track of how many people have actually responded to this campaign. This is all customized. Total number of campaign members, it's all being pulled from that campaign member record. Okay, and then if you scroll down a little bit, you will see the campaign members related list, and you'll see a list of folks in there. Now, to get to the person we're interested in, you're actually going to have to click on the Go to List. There should be 16 people in there. And we are looking for Dwight Schrute. Those of you who are Office fans, you'll know exactly who that is. All right, let's go in, and we are just going to edit. There's just a few fields in here. So we're going to edit Dwight Schrute's record. Okay, and we're going to change his status to RSVP yes. We're going to use the lookup for the hotel field. So this is a lookup relationship that has been created for this campaign member record. So go ahead and do the lookup, and we are going to put him into the St. Mark's Hotel. And he has deposited $250. Okay, go ahead and click on Save. All right, and then if you click up back at the top here where it says Back to Campaign Annual Seminar, go ahead and select that link, go back to the main record, and you should see that the total RSVPs has now increased. So this is, again, it's tallying up from that child record below, so it's pretty groovy that we can do roll-up summary fields now. Now what we want to do is we want to make sure that he's actually associated to the right hotel. So Amy is going to select the Hotels tab. And if you click on View All and Go, you'll see St. Mark's is one of our hotels. You just select it, you go in there, and you should see that Dwight Schrute is now one of the campaign members for that hotel, so we can plan appropriately. Okay, and so what we're going to do is we're going to do a little review just to recap. Again, what we did is we reviewed the campaign record. We went to the campaign members related list. So that part's not new. It's the roll-up summary part that's new. So that RSVP, yes, that was an example of one of those. So we're going to see some really cool stuff here in just a second. We saw that lookup field that went to the hotel object, which is a custom object. You can create any custom object you like and connect it up. All right, so let's keep moving. Email communication, very important. No matter what you're doing in Salesforce, this doesn't just have to do with campaigns. Just emailing could be internally, could be customers. So what you could do is when you're managing your campaigns and you want to, say, import a bunch of folks in and associate to the campaign, you can actually kick off workflow rules. If there's a certain status, you can send them very particular email. So you have to make sure you set up those templates, make sure you set up everything beforehand. But that's a pretty powerful thing to be able to do. Next item. Okay, so what we're going to end up doing is, so with our next exercise, we're going to email folks automatically. And then the third exercise, we're going to determine whether or not these folks have actually RSVP'd. If they have not RSVP'd to this campaign, after 14 days, we're going to clone them and we're going to associate them with a follow-up campaign. Again, that's that multi-wave effect. So we're going to talk about communicating with one workflow rule, and then we're going to talk about cloning with another workflow rule. All right? So here's our next exercise. All right, so the workflow rule itself has been actually built. We're just going to finish it off, and then we're going to test it, make sure everything's good. So AW Computing wants to send an agenda to every campaign member that has responded yes to their annual seminar invitation. So however that came in, they said, yes, I'm interested. We don't want to have to go find all their records and take care of all that. We want workflow to take care of it for us. So our task is to complete the workflow rule by adding a specific action, which is an email alert. So again, those of you who have created workflow rules? Okay, good number of you. Good, excellent. And then as far as the final test, because we're doing email, we're going to do the testing up here. Sorry. So you'll be able to see that it actually worked. So you'll be able to fill in the information, but we'll do the email testing. All right, let's go into the application. Okay, so what you're going to do is you're going to go to Setup. And under App Setup, which is the second section, so you have Personal Setup and App Setup, the second link under App Setup is Create. And then under Create, you will see Workflow and Approvals. And then the very first link under there is Workflow Rules. Now it gives you a great splash page, tells you all about workflow rules. Now, we're not going to go through every single part of workflow because this is not a workflow session. If you're interested in workflow, we have tons of classes all about workflow. But what we're going to do is continue on past this. And you'll actually see a couple of workflow rules have been created for us. The first one that we're interested in is the second one that Amy is hovering over, Send Annual Seminar Agenda. Go ahead and select that. Okay, so as I mentioned, the workflow rule itself, the detail has been created for us, but let's review it and see exactly what it's doing. So the object that we're working with is the campaign member object. So you can see that up in the corner there. Again, very important, very cool that we can work with a campaign member. And then the description and then the rule criteria, basically it's evaluating if the campaign member status is equal to RSVP yes and the campaign name itself equals annual seminar. That's the criteria that's going to trigger off this rule. And then what we have to do is we have to finish it off by putting in the action. All right. So in the second section here, we have workflow actions, and you would select edit. And then what we're going to do is we're going to add an immediate action. So we have two sections here. We can make something happen immediately. As soon as something changes, it fires off, sends an email. We could assign a task. We can do a field update, which we're going to do in our next exercise. We also have outbound messaging, which is beyond the scope of our class, but it's basically having Salesforce react with another application to make it do something as a result of a workflow rule being triggered. So again, the one we're interested in is creating a new email alert. So you'll select the first option. And again, if anything happens, you get stuck, please raise your hand. And the description, we're sending an agenda. That's the whole point. Somebody says, yep, I'm coming, so we're going to send them an agenda. You'll notice that the unique name is filled in automatically. You do not have to change that. If you hover over the little I, you'll see this is a unique reference to the API. No need to mess with it unless you're doing anything in the API. We have the field for the email template. Go ahead and do the little lookup. And you will see that there is a very specific email template for the annual seminar agenda. Go ahead and select that. And then we have the field for recipient type. So we have lots and lots of options in here. When you pull that search menu down, you'll see teams of people, specific people, users, roles. There's actually a very cool option, which is the email field. And this is what lets us communicate with folks that are outside of Salesforce. They're not using Salesforce. They could be customers, partners, whoever it might be. On our particular record, we're working with the campaign members, right? But this could be contacts, leads, whoever. Whoever is sitting in that email field, they're the ones that are going to get the email. So in our case, it's going to be one of our customers. All right, so Amy selected email field, and then what you're going to do is you're going to add it over to the selected recipients field. When you scroll down, you'll also see a section where you can put 5 additional email addresses. And again, doesn't have to be Salesforce users. Somebody in your organization that needs to know that this is happening, you can put up to 5 emails in there. We also have another option that's new. Not going to spend a lot of extra time on workflow features, but it's pretty cool. What it does is by default can use the current user's email address, because what happens is when it goes out, it's going to look like it comes from a particular person. Well, you can kind of determine that. And there's a little checkbox. You can say that actually would be the default. So if you wanted to come from marketing or sales or whatever, you can determine that. So you go ahead and click on Save. Okay, so we have one immediate action. That's what we're interested in doing for this particular exercise. So we want to make sure, again, they RSVP yes, they get an agenda. Go ahead and click on Done, up in the top right-hand corner. Now, if you're normally creating a workflow rule, a very important part is to activate. Can you hop back for 1 second? To activate that rule. This one's already been activated for us, so we don't have to worry about that. Okay, and so now go ahead, Amy, go back to the Campaigns tab. And then we're going to go back into the annual seminar campaign. And then if you scroll down, you go to the campaign members related list, just like we did before. The person that we're interested in this time is Pam Beasley. I hear some chuckles out there because I think they're recognizing those names. All right, so what we're going to need to do is same thing, very similar to what we did with Dwight. We're going to edit her record. We're going to change her status to RSVP yes. We're going to associate her to the same hotel. She's going to stay at the same hotel as Dwight, although she might not be happy about that. And the amount of the deposit is $250. And click on Save. All right, so what we need to do is we need to test to see if this actually worked. Now, with if it were, say, like a task, we can see immediately, we can track those in history. With emails, pretty much you got to go and look and see if it actually went through. So Amy's going to flip over to email that don't even pay attention to what's in there, except for the very first thing came from admin user, that was us, and Pam has received an agenda for this campaign, the annual seminar campaign. So we know that the workflow rule was in fact triggered. All that had to happen was that RSVP had to be flipped over to yes, and the agenda was sent out automatically. So it's again all about automating your processes. You don't have to do that yourself. Oh, she said yes, I got to go send her an email. Salesforce is going to take care of all that for you. The nice thing is, again, you can do it in mass. So if you update people in mass, then all of them could possibly get an agenda at the same time. All right, thank you. All right, let's go do a little recap. Again, what we did, we went back in. We went and took a look at the existing workflow rule. We added an action to say, yes, if they would like to come to our conference, we're going to send them an agenda. And then we took a look, and magically it did work. Okay, let's go to the next slide. So now we're actually going to focus more on that drip campaign effect. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be looking at a particular field, which is the status field. So it could be that they're sitting at still as sent, and if they're sitting at that status for some period of time, we want workflow to kick in. We wanted to make sure that they follow up and do something. In our case, they're actually going to clone this person, and they're going to associate them to a follow-up campaign. So in order to make this fully happen, what we have to do is we have to use a combination of workflow, which we just took a look at. Wasn't too scary, right? And we're also going to be taking a look at the Apex trigger that's making the cloning happen. So just to alleviate any fear, this is, again, not a developer class. I'm going to show you a snippet of this code. It's actually a pretty simple snippet. But I'm going to talk about that again just more in a minute. I know you're probably thinking, Apex code, what do you mean? So again, what happens when we clone? It's originally part of this annual user conference. What happens is it then becomes associated to the no response nurture campaign. And that way we know these people specifically have not responded, and we know to target them, to make sure to follow up with them. To say, hey, are you sure you're not interested? You want to come? Offer them something special to come along. Okay, next slide. So let's talk about the cloning. The Apex code, hopefully you've probably heard of it, right? The world's first on-demand programming language. It's a Java-like syntax. If you are a programmer, great. If you're a developer. If not, guess what? We got tons of people down in the developer lounge. You've got people down in the Expo Center that would be happy to talk to you about Apex code. We can offer you training on Apex code in our Success Team booth. So can you use this back at your office? We're going to give you, again, this snippet of code that you can see. We do not recommend that you just copy and paste this out. Just don't snatch it and put it into your live production org. As it says here, should only be written by certified developers. The code that we've taken has actually come from one of our blogs, and it's showing you the resource, where it came from. You can also get information about Apex on our developer website, so developer.force.com. It also mentions here, very important, test code is required for deployment in any live org. And that's why I'm telling you, don't just copy and paste this out and put it into your live production org. This is really used to show you what are the possibilities, what are the capabilities. And you can see it's actually, again, pretty simple snippet there. And we'll take a look here in just a minute. Okay, and let's look at the next exercise. So we're going to now focus on a time-delayed workflow. So the first one we did was immediate. As soon as it flipped from RSVP yes, they got an agenda. This one's a little different in the fact that it's going to watch, right? Something's going to trigger it, and I'll show you what that is, but then it's going to sit, and if that status is still setting as sent for 14 days, then on the 14th day, then it's going to clone this individual. And what happens is we're using the field update feature in workflow to make that happen. They're going to clone that individual, and we're going to associate them with that other campaign, right? So that's that multi-wave effect, that nurture campaign to follow up with them. Okay, so let's go back into the application. All right, we're going to go back to setup. And we're going to go back into app setup. And create is, again, the second link. And we're going to go to workflow rules again. And we're going to click on continue. And the one, again, that we're interested in is the update trigger field. So go ahead and select that. So again, let's take a look, see what the rule criteria says. If the campaign name is equal to annual seminar and the campaign member status is equal to sent, so that's the thing that's going to pay attention to. So there's also another set of evaluation criteria when a record is created or when a record is edited and did not previously meet the rule criteria. So this is also something you have to pay attention to. If it's a new record, or even if it's an edited record, but did not previously meet the criteria, this is going to kick off. Now again, the rule detail has already been created for us. We aren't interested actually in an immediate action this time, so Amy's going to click on edit. What's going to happen is both things open up. We're going to look down here at the time-dependent workflow actions. Okay, the time trigger itself has already been entered for us. This would be up to you. For us, we decided 14 days was the appropriate time that we were working with. So we say, okay, well, 14 days after this rule triggers, so it has to be triggered. Something has to kick it off. What we want to happen is we want to update a field. So we do new field update. And we are going to update the trigger field. And as far as the description, it's basically just changes the status from sent to clone to nurture. And again, that's that key, that's that thing. When it updates that field to clone to nurture, that's where the Apex code triggers in, or triggers rather, clones that person, associates them to that second campaign. So pull the field down and says field to update. And we're interested in the status field. Now, Salesforce is really smart. It knows that the status field is a pick list. So the first option, you can choose the value above or choose the value below. We're interested in a very specific value. We're interested in the first value in that pick list, which is clone to nature. Nurture. Sorry. Nature versus nurture. Sorry. Go ahead and click on save. All right. Great. So you can do the same thing. Go ahead and click on done, because that's really ultimately what we're trying to accomplish. And then what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at the Apex trigger, not to, again, make you nervous or anything, but we wanted to show you what this thing is going to be looking at. So there's a couple ways you can do that. You can actually go to App Setup and Develop, and you can see the Apex triggers there. Now what that does is it shows you all of them. You can also be very specific and go to Customize, go to Campaigns, and you can also see triggers under there, and that's very specific to campaigns. So Amy, go ahead and select that. Oh. Come on, crack? No? All right, we'll go back to the other one. Is it in here? All right, maybe not. Okay, so we're going to go back to Develop, and then, let's review that just to make sure. Go to App Setup, and then make sure you go to Develop. Go to Apex Triggers. Scroll up. Okay, great. And then there's that clone campaign member trigger. So open that up. Again, we're not here to teach you about Apex. There is a specialist in the room, and I won't point him out. No, I'm just kidding, if you have a bunch of questions. So again, I'm not going to pick through this either, but just so that you know that it's doing something really sophisticated and really cool, but see, it's not really long. It's pretty tight, really, really clean. And again, what this came from is that resource that you saw in your guide. You want to go read more about it? Great. Go out to that blog, because it talks exactly about this topic right here. So if you want to follow up, read more about it. If you're interested, again, more in learning about Apex, you're a developer, make sure to take some classes, go to our Success Team booth, Or if you have a developer on staff, perfect. You can show it to them, and if they know what they're doing, then what they can do is they can reproduce this, make sure they're doing it in the proper way by testing it, and then they can implement it into your live production org. All right, so what we need to do is we need to go in and we need to go back to our annual seminar campaign. Okay? We're going to go back down to the campaign members related list. And if you open up that go to list option, you'll see that Jim Halpert is also one of our last people. So you know Jim had to be in there if Pam was in there. Okay? And so what we're going to do is we're going to simulate the fact that this person has sat there for 14 days and has not done anything. So obviously you don't want to sit here for 2 weeks. So we're going to simulate that happening. So we're going to change this status. So put that status to clone to nurture. So we would assume that workflow is going to take care of this for us. I promise you it will, but we have to kind of make this happen for our particular exercise. And go ahead and click on Save. And then what you want to do is you want to go check to see if he was actually cloned and associated to that new campaign, that nurture campaign. So you go back up to the View menu, choose All Active Campaigns, click on Go. All right? And you should see the No Response Nurture campaign. Go ahead and select that. All right, and you should see, go ahead and click on Go to List. Scroll down. And you should see Jim Halpert. So you see that he actually was cloned, and he was associated to that new nurture campaign. All right, so let's go ahead and review. So we had 3 different exercises here. We reviewed the campaign itself. We looked at the campaign member-related list. We changed the status on some folks. They got an agenda automatically from via workflow. We also set another workflow rule. So if somebody sits for 14 days, they get cloned and associated to a follow-up campaign, so we know that we need to follow up with them. Okay? All right. If you want to learn more about any of this, campaigns or Apex triggers or workflow, we have lots of classes. Please make sure that you check with the Success Team booth. They'll help you find any type of training that you are possibly interested in. If you could possibly do me a favor and fill out a survey, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to open the floor up to questions. You can ask as many questions you like. We actually have quite a bit of time, but I also want to make sure you're able to get into the Colin Powell speech. Okay, so to fill out this survey for me, you go ahead and click on the Home tab, and you'll see the course survey here. Go ahead and click into the link. If you pull the menu down, you will see Building an Automated Drip Campaign. It should just take you a second. And then if you have questions after you've filled out your survey, please raise your hand, and a helper will bring a microphone to you. Yes. You have a question? Can I get a helper up here, please? You don't want a helper? Ah.
When you were doing the first 500 training.
Yeah, I do. Yeah. How you doing? Sorry, I thought you had... Yeah, I do remember you. Yes, I do. Yay! Good job. Good job. Does anybody have any questions at all? Please raise your hand. Okay, we have a question over here. Oh, all right. Question back there.
Hi. In the second example, when the workflow automatically sent the email, do emails triggered from workflow, should that have added a note to the activity history for that contact?
I'm sorry, say that again.
When you send the email from a workflow, does it also record in the activity history for that contact that they received an email?
So email is not tracked the same way. Like if you sent out a task, the task would show up as something that is an activity. The email does not. So with workflow, it is a little different. Normally, if you send something specifically from a contact, it does show up in the activity history related list. But email sent from workflow is not quite the same way. So you just, especially if there's a time dependency, you can actually monitor to make sure it's going to happen. But that's pretty much the way workflow works.
If you did want some note in the activity history, can you have a more complicated workflow that does 2 steps, like send the email and put some note in the activity history?
You can do a field update where you can update some field with a particular status, like, yeah, they got the email. So that would be a matter of customizing that field and updating it with the workflow. Absolutely.
Okay, thanks.
Great. Question. I have another question up here. Hi, how are you?
Is campaigns in the professional edition?
It is not, but you can add it. So the question is campaigns in the professional edition? It is actually an add-on that you can add on if needed. Thanks.
Oh, okay.
You have a question? Right here, we have a question.
Hi, thank you. If a user, if they click in the email, or if they go to a specific URL, etc., can that kick off a specific workflow as well?
I'm sorry, I'm having difficulty hearing.
I don't know if we can turn it up, or could you just speak louder?
Yeah, and I'll repeat your question. I'll repeat your question. Just ask it to me.
Can, as far as what kicks off the workflow, can you have clicks within the email, or if they go to a specific URL on your site, that in our email?
Yeah, she'll repeat the question.
If the user goes to a specific URL, it kicks off a email workflow. Can we do that through Salesforce?
Not if they're outside of Salesforce. Now, not that you can't do all kinds of tricky things, but if it's outside of Salesforce, it's not going to trigger anything off. Unless the question is if there's on your site and you want a workflow to trigger, the information would have to actually come into Salesforce from that site. So if you've got something set up like a web to lead, then absolutely it could trigger that off.
Yeah, no kidding.
Ooh, any other questions? Sorry. Yes.
If Jim later then accepts the RSVP on the 16th day, what kind of action can I take to notify or maybe create a task based on the fact that he's now in the 2 campaigns? Can you know what I mean? Will I be able to follow him?
Okay, so at that point, after the 14th day, he's been associated to the new campaign, so they're going to follow up with him anyway, we assume. So either way, whether he accepts himself or we follow up with him to accept, either way.
I want my people to think.
Yes, maybe think a little bit. Oh, did you? Oh, great. Does anybody have any other questions?
I got here a little bit late because of the overflow. I missed the piece on creating Apex triggers. What do you recommend in terms of where we go to quickly learn how to create this? Because I personally am getting confused as to when I can use a workflow versus when I need an Apex trigger, and I'm sure y'all have a great place to go there.
Well, you can go to our developer site, so developer.force.com. I recommend training highly because this can be definitely very complicated. So
is there a specific class for that?
501 will teach you how to write. Now there's going to be a new one. It's an intro to Apex, and that's going to be released in February.
Okay.
Great. Thank you.
Sorry.
Hi. Sorry, I'm making you do this because they're recording it.
Is there any way you could trigger an email and track it?
I'm sorry?
Like have an email that's automatically triggered off an action or something you said that's then actually tracked back to the contact? Because you were saying it's not tracked for a workflow.
No, it's not. What the gentleman had asked is if you what you can do is create sort of another field that gets updated so you know that the email was in fact sent.
But that's just a field that's not actually tracking an activity.
No.
So you can't actually track any kind of activity via email, automatic emails.
Again, normally.
But also, you're sending the email to the campaign member record, which could be based on a contact or a lead.
But either.
So you're not actually sending the email to the contact record. You're sending it to the campaign member record. Now, we've upgraded the campaign member recently so that you can pull the existing contact email into that, and you can use that, but it's actually a different object than the contact. It's the campaign member. So she could be a member of 70.
But either way, it won't track it unless you have another field. Anybody else have questions? Okay, great.
So I use vertical response a lot for my emails because the lists are so large.
Yes.
So when you do a follow-up campaign or email through a campaign, can you also integrate it with vertical response, or can you send more than the 1,000 emails, like if there's 2,000 people on your campaign?
That are being updated at one time?
Yeah.
You mean? Well, and this, again, is a little bit different because it's workflow that's taken care of. It's not like mass email. There is sort of an activity limit. I know what you mean as far as, and you might have something else that happens if you're using vertical response. Let something else happen as a, if it's cloned, maybe not send an email, do something so you know that you need to have vertical response take care of it. But there is an activity limit even with workflow.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Sure. Hi.
How are you?
Good.
Can we build a campaign to send to a custom email field at the opportunity level? Like an other email address field?
Okay, so what it would be...
Do you follow me?
Well, yeah. So you can, on the campaign member record, you can do lookups to other objects. Just like we did that lookup to the hotel.
So I just look up the custom field. And are we able to create email templates that'll pull dynamic content and images based on the account and related opportunity?
You can do that if you use like maybe some special app from the Exchange. It doesn't do that by default out of the box.
Didn't think so.
Not a problem. All right. Okay. Thank you.